Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Open to Work Beyond the Label. I'm your host, Laura Colón, and this podcast is for talent in transition. Open to Work Beyond the Label is a platform where accomplished professionals can tell their story, showcase their expertise, and step confidently into their next opportunity. That said, I do have a very special guest today. And in fact, my guest is not actually open to work, but she has such a great story about when she was open to work. So I wanted to bring her on and have her tell that story to inspire all who are looking to transition so she can tell how she did it herself. And so that very special guest is my sister, Alisha Colón. Alisha, thank you for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Alicia, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you came from initially, where you started your career, and then ultimately how you ended up open to work?
Yeah, sure. So I started my journey in the healthcare industry. I was actually in clinical, so I was a patient care associate, and my big dream was to be a nurse. And I realized that that was not what I wanted to do after doing it for some time. I even started nursing school. I was just like, this might not be for me. It was ultimately too sad and I just couldn't handle it. You have to be a special person to be a nurse. We have a sister that's a nurse. She's that special person. I am not. But I wanted to find another way to help patients because I truly did enjoy what I did. I just couldn't handle it. It was too sad, emotional. So I decided, how can I help patients beyond being a nurse? So I thought about it and I decided to go into HR. So I went back to school, I got my master's, I got my master's in human resource management, and I started working at a big hospital, a different hospital than I was at for clinical. And I was in HR and talent acquisition, and I started as a coordinator, worked my way up to a sourcer, worked my way up to a recruiter, and I loved it. Like, it was great, but COVID hit and it was very drastically changed. So I decided to look for something different and I decided to go into education technology. One of my friends actually left the hospital a year prior and she was in education technology at a company. She raved about it, she loved it. So I decided I'm going to take the chance and I'm going to jump at it and go for it and go into education technology. So I started recruiting instead of for nurses, I was recruiting for engineers. A lot to learn. I didn't know a lot about it, but I jumped right in and I started working at it. And about 11 months in, I was actually laid off. The company just wasn't doing well and they had to lay off people. I was laid off for about, I think, total almost like 10 months or so, but I feel like everything that happened to me happened for a reason. So in my time being laid off, like, just so many things happened to me. I got engaged and I was planning a wedding. My grandmother got sick and I got to spend more time with her, help her throughout her journey. And then I got a call maybe a week after my grandmother died for a role. I was applying for so many different jobs. I was so like not getting calls back, not getting emails back. I was getting a lot of rejection emails. So I was like, maybe it's not my time to work. Maybe I'm just supposed to be doing what I'm doing. So I just kept going, kept applying. I would spend probably like 3 hours a day looking for jobs, just things that I wouldn't even normally apply for, just because I don't know, I kind of felt desperate. I was like, I need a job. Like, thank God I'm a saver because, it kind of helped me throughout my journey. I didn't have to like rely on anybody. I was able to like go through it myself. But so about a week after my grandmother passed away, I got a call for an interview for the job that I'm at now, actually. And the second interview that I did, she actually told me that her higher up hired somebody else into the role. So they would keep me in the pipeline. If anything else opened up, they would reach back out to me. Then a couple months later, still job searching in August, they reached out to me again for another role, but it was a more junior role. And I just, I knew my worth. I didn't want to take that role. I didn't want to be in a junior role. I knew what I wanted to do. And I felt like if that wasn't it, I wasn't going to go for it. So I waited again. I was like, I'm just going to keep trying. So I kept trying. I went on a couple of different interviews, a lot more rejection emails. And then in October, I saw a posting online for that same place that I interviewed for, and I was still interested. So I reached out to them. I went on an interview and they hired me, and I've been here for a year and 2 months so far. And I actually found out that the role that they hired me into was the role that I applied to in June that they called me for, but the girl that they ended up hiring ended up leaving in like September or something. So it ultimately worked out. Everything happens for a reason, and I ended up here and I'm working, thriving, and it all worked out. I just, it took some time to get here, but I got here and this is where I am.
Yeah. It's such a good story. And when I got the concept for this podcast, I immediately thought about like you and I was like, hey, what was your experience? Like, how did you feel? And then you told me this story, and I was like, oh my God, you have to tell this story on the podcast because it's so good. It- there's so much resilience, overcoming so many challenges. You talked about grandma passing away, which was hard for everyone, but you being there made it so much easier for people like me who couldn't be there as much. And so thank you for that. But also planning the wedding too. And so just so much going on in life. And although when you were laid off, it may have felt like really hard, it sounds like you were able to triumph in the end and get this incredible role that you're now thriving. So, thank you for telling that story. I really appreciate it. I do want to circle back to the feeling of being laid off. When you were laid off, how were you feeling?
Yeah, I was feeling frustrated, drained. In the beginning, I was in shock because I've never been laid off before. I've quit jobs, but I've never been laid off. So I was
Yeah.
like, what do I do? When they lay you off, they kind of like just sit you down and talk to you. But this was over Zoom because I was a remote worker. I didn't even turn on my camera because I was just so like angry about it. And I was just like, I don't like, I knew what was coming, but I didn't know how it was going to work out. So I went through the call. And then after, I was just like, what just happened? Did I just lose my job? So I was mostly frustrated. I went through like the week and I kind of was like, I'm not gonna look for a job right now. I'm just gonna take some time to like breathe and kind of, I've never not had a job since I was like 14 years old. I've always worked, like even school and work. That's all I did since I was 14 years old. So I honestly was kind of lost. I was like, what do I do from here? So I took some time to myself. About a couple weeks later is when I got engaged. So then I got excited. And then I was like, crap, I'm gonna get married. I need a job. So
Yeah.
I was like, let me actually put some effort, start looking. I like updated my LinkedIn and I was like, let me look for jobs. I was like, let me reach out to some people that I know like moved on. I reached out to my old boss. She actually was looking into a job for me, but I ultimately decided not to like go back. I just kind of felt mostly lost. And the reason was because I felt like no one was answering my emails. I was getting rejections, but not as many rejections as jobs I applied for. So I learned from being laid off and from applying to so many roles. Not every recruiter is like me. They don't answer your emails. And like, I just kind of sat there and I was like, damn, I was like, I must be a great recruiter because I answer everybody's emails. I just don't get what's going on here. Like, where are the rejection emails? I'd rather be rejected and know that I'm rejected than sit here just waiting for like, so did anybody look at my resume? And I get it. Like there's jobs out there, like I'll post something and I'll get thousands of resumes. And even if I don't look at your resume because, I got 1,000 of them, I still send an email like the position was filled or, you're rejected or this, that. So I kind of just felt frustrated. I felt lost. I felt like, am I ever going to get a job? And after getting so many emails, I was just like, all right, I need to truly think about like what I want to do. Do I want to go back into healthcare? Do I want to try more in the education technology space? Do I want to do something totally different? I have a master's. I could wiggle my way into different things. But I was like, I really like healthcare, but I don't know if I like the hospital healthcare. So then I started looking at like doctor's offices, maybe big like urgent cares. And this is how I found my current job. It's aesthetic dermatology, and they have like 175 locations. So I was like, that's something that I could get into. It's not hospital, but it's doctor, and they're big, large organization. I love that. I'm used to working with high requisitions, high volumes. So I was like, okay, let me try that route. And I started to feel better after that interview because I was like, all right, at least I know that I was capable of getting a job. I was capable of getting an interview, having a great interview. I enjoyed our conversation. And ultimately, even though they hired somebody else, I was like, I could do this. So
Yeah.
that made me feel a little bit better. Then the summer came and I was like, all right, I'm going to keep looking for a job, but I'm going to take a little bit of a break. It's the summertime. I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to do what I have to do. So, I felt less frustrated after that interview because I felt like, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'll get there when I get there.
Yeah.
And then I just kept going with it. I started to feel lost again. You go through the waves where you feel good, you feel bad, you feel this. So I just kept it moving, kept going, and I set realistic expectations for myself. Like, I'm going to apply to 5 jobs a day, or I'm going to not check my email this weekend so I don't get upset. And I did start feeling better. And then after they reached out to me in August, I was like, wow, okay, someone thought about me after it's been a couple months. I was like, okay, I made an impression. So that made me feel better. And then when I got the role, obviously I felt great. I was like, yes, I am employed again and I have a job and I don't have to worry.
Yeah, it's so funny that you share this because, we're sisters, we talk all the time, but I didn't even know that you were feeling any of those emotions because I never see you sweat. Like, you're just like, it's good, I'm good, we good, And you're planning the wedding, and like, the wedding was incredible, right? Like, maybe it was a blessing that you had that time to plan because the wedding was perfect. When you look back on that time, how do you feel about having so much time off, like in the middle of your career?
Honestly, I probably think it was for the best. Like I said, I think it happened in the time it was supposed to happen. With grandma getting sick, like I was at her house like multiple times a week helping out, like we were all taking shifts. Like you said, you were in California, you couldn't be there, but I was in another borough. Like I was able to get there. So, it was a lot of work. I was like, this is like taking me back to like my hospital clinical days. I was like, this is a lot of work. And it's for someone you love. So it's totally different. So it was draining in its own way, but I felt like that's where I was supposed to be in that time.
Yeah,
And had I not been laid off, I think I would have been more stressed out because I would have been working and not being able to be there, or I would have been working and being there. So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise, I guess you could say. I mean, nobody wishes to be laid off. If I could go back, I probably would say, no, I don't want to be laid off. But I think it happened for a reason. I think I was where I was supposed to be. And I think in the time, maybe I could have got a job a little sooner than I did, but I think everything happens in its right time, right? So I'm not going to take it all back. I did what I did and I did how I was able to do it. And like you said, I tried not to sweat. I just took more time with the family. I spent more time with the family. I was at dad's house every weekend, like, or every other week, like just go and hang out with everyone. So I took the time that I needed for myself, and I also took the time I needed to job search. And when the job came, the job came, and I wouldn't take it any back. I still feel like, why was it me that was laid off, over like other people? But I get it. Last one in, first one out, it's just that's just how it works in life.
yeah,
And, I don't want it to happen again. But if it ever did happen again, I feel like I'm well prepared for it. I could do it again. I don't want to do it again. It just takes a lot of smiling. Just smile when you're upset, and you can trick your brain into making yourself feel better sometimes, because if you let it get to you, it will get to you and it will just make you more frustrated than you need to be, which will ultimately hinder you trying to find a job. So I
yeah.
wouldn't take it back. I don't want to do it again, like I said, but I think it happened for a reason. And the time that I got in that time frame with grandma and my family, it priceless.
Yeah, totally. So there's a favorite part of this story that I have, which is the part where you applied for the job, you didn't get the job, and then you persisted. They reached out to you. You said, that role isn't quite what I'm looking for, but thank you. And then you found another role again that was more in line with your level of expertise or I would, your career level, I should say. Um, and you got the job. What other advice would you share with people who are in the weeds right now trying to find their next role?
I would say be annoying, honestly. Use LinkedIn. Use the power that you have. Everyone's on social media. I'm a recruiter and I get so many messages on LinkedIn. And if they did not reach out to me on LinkedIn, I probably would not have found their resume in the thousands of people that applied. So someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn, I look their name up and, I take a look at their resume, and if they're qualified, I'll reach out to them for the role. So 9 times out of 10, like, I would have never saw that person before. So had they not reached out to me, maybe they would have got a rejection email. Following up, reaching out to connections, people that maybe you're not connected to me. and you want a job where I work, but maybe your old bosses or your old colleague or, someone you went to school with. Try reaching out to those people. Set realistic expectations because a lot of people do not answer on LinkedIn, but it only takes one. It only takes one person to answer you. So it's super important just to get in there, be annoying, and reach out to whoever you want. It doesn't hurt if you message someone they don't answer. At least you tried. But set realistic expectations. You're not going to get an answer back from everyone. Maybe you'll only get an answer back from 1 out of 30, but who cares? It's that one person that might help you get through the door, and that's all you need, one person to answer you.
Yeah, it's funny. I was on with a woman today who was telling me that she was transitioning from being a teacher to going into software sales, and she really wanted to do it. And she ended up reaching out to a bunch of people on LinkedIn, and she listened to this podcast, and this guy just totally blew her away in terms of his expertise and what he shared on the podcast. And she reached out to him directly on LinkedIn, and he responded. Turns out now they're good pals, and he helps her out in her tech career. And it's like, it just takes that. It takes like noticing something about somebody and then reaching out and making it personalized. Because I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss. I had a guy reach out to me recently about a role at my company. And I was like, first of all, he didn't even put the company name, but I saw that he went to my college. And I, have a special place in my heart for my college. So I responded and I was like, okay, well, here's the person to reach out to, but make sure you make it personalized. This person posts a ton of content. Go find their content and make it a personalized note. I wasn't going to make the introduction because you didn't make it personal to me, so I don't know who you are, but you went to the same college. I'll give you that. So sometimes you'll find a nice person because usually I don't answer anybody that's blindly reaching out to me. But if there's that personal touch, when people watch my videos or my content and they reference that when they reach out to me, I respond. So I make it personalized too, because then you're more likely to get a response.
It's true, very true. When I go back and I look at messages, like people that say, "Oh, I went to school there too," or "I worked at," or "You used to work at," "I would love to work there." It makes it look like they actually did some research. And even like interviewing people now, when I interview, if you don't know anything about the company that you're interviewing for, you are not getting this job. You know what I mean? People need to do their research before they interview. If you're not taking that time to research, then why should I take the time on you? That is like the biggest thing, even just reaching out to people on social media, but especially when you get an interview, do your research because that just shows that you really want to be there. You really want to work there and you're going to go above and beyond in that role compared to someone else.
Yeah. So now you are opening up a box that I hadn't thought to open up, and now I want to open it, which is you are a recruiter. So, like, can you give me more details about recommendations you would have from your recruiting hat now?
Yeah. So I would say when interviewing, the most important thing, like, hands down, is just doing your research. If you don't know about the company you're interviewing for, I'm going to say 99% of the time, you're not getting the job. Sometimes if you're great at everything else, I'll give you a pass and I'll just give you that information. Like, sure, you do some research on the company. I'll give you some ideas, tips, tricks, but you have to be really good at everything else for me to go that far. The other thing is I know it's hard to say don't be nervous, but I feel like when you're nervous, you end up tripping over your words and you have the information, right? You want to give that information, but you can't because you're so nervous. So trying to like really try to calm your nerves, grab some water or something to make yourself cool, calm, collected. Because I don't know you. I don't know if you're just nervous or if you just really sound like this. And then making sure that you don't sound like AI, like that you're reading. There's people out there that they over prepare. And if you type out everything that you want to say, you're going to end up reading from a paper and you're going to sound like you're reading from that paper. So instead, make like small bullet points, right? So that you don't forget what you're going to say. But if you do forget, you can glance at the bullet and go, oh, yeah, I want to mention that. Let me mention my metrics, right? Let me mention that I did this. Let me mention my goals. When you write everything down, you tend to just read from a piece of paper. And I can guarantee well-groomed recruiter is going to know you're reading from a paper. And then just the other thing, just be you, be personable. Don't try to be someone that you're not, because that's not going to help you get the job. If I want someone that's genuine, someone that's excited and passionate about the job, right? So if you're genuine and, you do your research and, you make sure that you're well prepared, you'll do well on your interview. And remember, as a recruiter, I'm just your first step. You have a whole other interview to go through with the hiring managers. If you get through the door with me, make sure to continue to do your research, because the interview that's beyond me is going to be 10 times harder.
I love the recommendation about being authentic, because part of this podcast is saying being open to work isn't always a bad thing. It gives you that opportunity, like we've been talking about, to make sure that you're choosing the right opportunity for you. And if you feel like you can't be authentic when you show up every day, then maybe that's not the right place for you. And so, again, going back to your experience when you said, that's not for me, I'm going to pass on that, that's great, because you really should feel comfortable and confident and excited going into your next role. There's so much out there, and I know sometimes it feels like the world is so small, especially when you've been looking for such a long time. But making sure that you lean into what's aligned with your core values is going to give you an opportunity to go somewhere that you'll be for a long time. Because you don't want to be in the position again where you're leaving and now I got to find something again. So,
Exactly. I'm a firm believer in longevity at your roles. I think if you're happy and, it's working for you and it's working for the company, why not stay? So if, you're just taking a role because you're desperate and you're going to leave in like 6 months when something new, why take the opportunity? I get it. Not everybody is as blessed as me. Like I said, even if I wasn't a saver, I have family, people will help me throughout my time. So not everybody can take that time and go, no, this is not for me. And I get that, it happens. But I think if you are in a position where you can say no to something that's not for you, you should, because, you might regret it later. You might be unhappy. Something else that's better might come along. And now, you're like, maybe I can't take it right now because it's going to look bad on my resume. So if you're in a place where you can say no to something that's not for you, I would do that.
yeah. So, what other advice would you share with all the people who are open to work right now?
I would say, honestly, take time to yourself. Don't just focus on finding a job. Don't take 8 hours a day that you would be working to looking for a job, because you're going to be more stressed that way. Setting expectations for yourself. So saying maybe, all right, I'm going to spend 3 hours a day looking for roles, or I'm going to spend a couple of hours maybe changing around my resume, maybe making a couple of resumes geared towards different places. And then, like I said, setting realistic expectations. Not everybody's going to answer your application. Not everybody's going to email you back. Not everybody's going to message you back on LinkedIn. So really understanding that and setting those expectations for yourself so that you're not upset every day. Because if you get 7 months of, time off between, being laid off until you get your next job, you don't want those 7 months to be miserable months. You don't have a job. Take some time and do some things that you normally wouldn't do. If you can, go visit some family that maybe is out of state. If you want to go hang out, I think I went to your house once in California while I was unemployed. Take time to yourself. Like, it's okay to take a week off, especially right after you're laid off. Take some time to yourself, because that's going to help you regroup and help you understand what you want, what you need, and where you want to go. And it's okay to divert. It's okay to say, well, I was a teacher for 7 years and I don't want to be a teacher anymore. Or I was in sales for 10 years and I don't want to sell anything anymore. It's okay to divert. Some people will take a chance on you. You just have to take the chance on yourself. And, you have to understand that this is new and this is exciting, and you'll get there when you get there. So setting those expectations, giving yourself time to regroup and to relax every day is important. Like, don't take the 8 hours that you would have been working to look for a job, because you're not going to find a job that way. You're just going to end up being more stressed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you for sharing your story. In the moment, it's super hard. And now looking at how far you've come along and now being a top performer in your current organization is just such a special story. And I needed you to say it hear out loud for all the people who are out there in a similar position as you were in that time. So thank you again for sharing your story. If this story resonated with anybody, please do like, share, comment. And if you are open to work and you want to step into the spotlight and get on stage, please reach out to me. I'm looking for my next guests, and I'd love to have more people tell their story as they're looking for what's right for them. So thanks again, Alicia.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.